Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to When Was That Podcast. In honor of one of the most obnoxious, awful radio shows to ever have been on air in the Sacramento market, I present to you the only memorable bit. This is the sound of my notes. That way you know that I am doing my due diligence and taking notes as I listen to Who Are These Podcasts? WATP number 4. WATP reviews The Kongversation. Let's jump into it. So my very first note for this episode at 3 minutes 45 seconds, the guys are surprised that even niche communities get very busy. Well, you're going to be surprised here at the end of this episode, too, to find something out.
Discussion. There are 2,333 topics that consist of over 76,000 replies.
Holy shit.
I had no idea this was going on.
I can't.
This was all news to me.
I barely know of the existence of these games, but that means that there's communities of fucking people who are like following every little nuance and whatever with these fucking characters. I
wait until you find out about the Dabbleverse guys.
Me too. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because I got to assume these guys are both like, I don't know, in their late 20s, early 30s. I mean, they're referencing
NC. At 6 minutes, 10 seconds, Carl calls on the Urban Dictionary because he can't figure out what the term fan winking is.
I'm disappointed in my old nerdery, honestly.
So can you explain to me what fan wink means?
To me, it would be like kind of like a fan circle jerk, if you will. So it's like, so.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think it is a circle jerk.
Yeah.
One of the things I read on Urban Dictionary was that when you fan wank something, you explain away something that's ridiculous. Like,
I actually do like the use of Urban Dictionary. I actually kind of wish they'd incorporate Urban Dictionary more often. So at 9:50, I actually wrote down at first that Kevin has the gall to judge anyone's Hulk Hogan impression. Now, of course, in our last episode, Now, of course, on the last episode, Kevin gave one of the worst Hulk Hogan impressions that we've ever heard.
I pulled another time where they're doing some goofy voices, but I actually thought this was a very good impression of one Hulk Hogan.
Would you like a continental breakfast, brother?
I had my finger on the trigger, ready to pull if Kevin was going to say a word about anyone else's Hulk Hogan impression.
I thought that was pretty good.
That was the most depressing thing because you and I were doing that.
I know. Yeah.
Show, and I'm listening to these assholes and going, "Oh no,
yeah,
we're terrible."
But as I listened on, the guys actually had a good sense of humor about it. Carl also calls back to last episode, and they have a good laugh. All right, at 14 minutes 30 seconds, Kevin has a very correct rant about hashtags that I actually agree with.
To me personally, when someone is speaking and they say hashtag and then follow it with something,
and then they proceed to have a discussion and for the next several minutes about hashtags and what hashtags are versus how the general public uses them.
I clipped 2 of them. Here's the first one.
Hashtag I am mildly annoyed by Kevin Callahan.
All right, so that's the first one.
And I should say it's named hashtag douchery number 1. Here's the second. Hashtag trigger warning. And why? They think that's hilarious, the hashtag. Because it doesn't make any sense. No. And I think people don't understand.
The majority of the population does not understand how a hashtag works.
This is what I meant by the Urban Dictionary actually adds some fun flavor to the discussions because this conversation was just flat. The last several minutes were just flat. No one's changing their minds on what a hashtag is, how the general public doesn't understand how a hashtag functions in social media.
You know, and then I don't know if I need to. I don't need to explain it to you. I know, but I'm assuming our audience is smart enough to know what the fuck hashtag is and how and why.
That guy, no hashtags, yeah.
But I think it's really funny. I loathe when people use it for a description of something, but it's not really its main purpose. Like on Facebook or whatever, when they use it. And I understand Facebook recognizes hashtags now, but it's like, it's not.
The way that hashtags are used on social media, I don't have a problem with, except for when they try to do punchline, which is terrible. But to organize conversations, and obviously I was watching the Academy Awards and laughing at all the jokes because you can follow with hashtag Oscars. That's fine, no problem with that. But when you use it in conversation to try to make jokes, and they're just not funny jokes at all, maybe I'm taking it a little too personally.
Yeah. What would have been a bit more fun was if they pulled up the Urban Dictionary definition for hashtag and they ripped apart a few of the top definitions. That could have been more fun. I think these are the things that I'm thinking about while Kevin is drowning on about hashtags. The 22-minute and 55-second mark. Kevin's talking about Conquer as though it's a Microsoft game.
I didn't follow this at all. That's why I didn't clip it. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Well, and that's why, I mean, it was more, not that, Microsoft is going to condone rape in a game, but I'm like, Jesus, if this was Nintendo, you're not going to have any kind of sexual.
I never had Conker's Bad Fur Day, but I happen to know what system Conker's Bad Fur Day was on. So I've got some bad news for you, Kevin. Actually, the legacy of Conker is that it was a Nintendo game. Unfortunately, Kevin, Conker's Bad Fur Day was a Nintendo 64 exclusive from Rare, before Rareware became a Microsoft company. Carl likes to joke about how organized he is, and being organized takes a lot of work. And so at the 30-minute mark, he's lamenting how much time it takes for him to produce WATP already at this point, 4 episodes in. He's saying that it's already taken too much time. And then Kevin at 31:30, he makes a pretty heavy analogy for his workflow in producing this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to. It's like, you ever heard this is a fucking horrible analogy, but like when someone's being sexually assaulted, you just have to leave your body.
35-minute and 15 seconds. Kevin wants to talk shop about the podcast.
So I was thinking, just as possibly for the next episode, that maybe we would change it up a little bit in terms of how we do the production of the show. What do you think? So I'm thinking, because the typical way that we would do a show is you listen separately, I listen separately. We both clip or take excerpts of the show that we think are funny. We write down comments on those. And then the day of the show, day of taping, we upload those, and then I load them all on to my iPad. So for us,
they call it in the business, they call it live to tape.
Yes, there you go.
So it's not scripted.
Right. So we would listen to the next episode, wherever the show is that is chosen, and we would start and
talk over it.
Yeah, and start and stop it. When need to, if we need to elaborate or something, and then see maybe how.
I like this idea. I think this is an A+ idea. I think this is actually pretty similar to how I'm doing this. Although I actually haven't listened to these episodes before. That's why I sit down and take my notes. Then I record over my notes. And so at the conclusion of this episode, at 37 minutes, Carl teases the very next podcast. And then at 39 minutes, Carl does the cringiest tag out ever.
If you want, why don't we play the teaser? This is a podcast called the Popped Podcast, and this is an episode from January 24th of 2016 called Guess Who Got a Website?
South African Nazis, kid camps, daycare, which is, that's fun. So go to popped.bz and take a look at that. Be like boy. Sorry about that.
Regular listeners to WATP might know that Carl uses the tagline, "Sleep well, every pony." Well, this is an episode before we even get to "Sleep well, every pony."
On that note, join us again next week, because it might be the show where we find out once and for all, who are these podcasts? Seacrest out.
This is much worse. See, Sleep well, every pony is a little bit weird, but it's memorable. This is just douchey.
Seacrest out. Seacrest out. Seacrest out.
We've now reached the part of the show where I take a look at the podcast that Kevin and Carl were reviewing to see if they're still around. The Kongversation, I'm pleased to report, is actually still in production. Episode 1328 was published to YouTube on August 11th, 2025. At the 1 minute 50 second mark, Hal reports that he got COVID and then proceeds to whine about it.
Conversation, the I'm Hyle Russell. My voice is barely hanging on, and that would just immediately demolish any chance I have of pulling off a successful Kongversation episode, because in the time between the last episode of the Kongversation, the episode on the Hilltop layer I did with Matt, and right now, I came down with COVID for the very first time. And Malik, let me tell you, that wasn't fun.
At the 5-minute mark, the show starts talking about sublayers without explaining what sublayers are. So this show actually hasn't changed a bit.
Prior to you going through the sinkhole to the next sublayer, to the next world, everything about that will be on the table, but we are not getting into anything.
Thanks for listening to When Was That Podcast. This is the show that listens back to Who Are These Podcasts. Thanks for checking us out, and I'll see you guys next time.